Welcome back to Chords and Queens, the podcast dedicated to highlighting the work of women composers and musicians within classical music. And on today's episode, I'm so excited to be joined by the incredibly talented performer and composer, Precious Akindele. So for a bit of background, Precious started learning to play the piano at the age of 8, but like many students, myself included, she briefly gave it up, but thankfully she's returned to the instrument, quickly finding her voice not just as a performer, but as a composer as well. She's been an incredibly powerful voice in speaking openly about living with low vision and how she's developed her own way of making music by learning and playing by ear. And with all of this incredible talent, she is currently studying at the Brit School, which is the UK's leading school for performing and creative arts. You may have seen her on Channel 4's The Piano, where she stunned audiences by performing one of her own original compositions. But Precious just seems to be getting started. Later this year, she will be performing an organ recital of original music, which I'm so looking forward to chatting all about. But before we do that, let's start at the beginning and learn a bit more about you and how you got into music in the first place. So I was wondering if you could talk to us about how you got your start in music. Did you always dream of being a musician? And what made you want to play the piano in the first place?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I just started having piano lessons at my primary school. I did it mainly to get out of class, to be honest.
Love that.
I know I wasn't very serious about it, to be real, and I never knew, and I think this is like a big issue in music education. I never knew that you could be a musician. I didn't really understand how it happened. I just thought, oh, I like playing piano, that's fine, whatever. And yeah, so it wasn't anything I took seriously for a really long time. I just kind of enjoyed it, really.
And then did you have like great teachers in the moment that sort of inspired you or anything like that?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, my first piano teacher, he was a lovely guy, and he would play me all the pieces. I actually was a terrible learner. I was very bad at piano for a very long time, to be honest. And so I would just be like, oh, can you play me all the pieces? I want to hear all the pieces in the grade book. And I'd never practice, and I just want to listen to him play. And so I found that really inspiring. And in my mind, I didn't really understand that he was sort of reading the music and playing. I just thought he was playing. So it was, in a way, it's kind of like the first sort of instance of me seeing a composer, even though he wasn't, but like sort of that creation of music on the spot and live music. And he was really encouraging. I mean, he was always telling my mum that I need to practice, and I said no. So,
isn't that the case? Isn't it always? Need to practice more. And yeah, that's one of my favorite parts about your story was when you mentioned that you gave up playing the piano, because I believe you mentioned you hated practicing as well, which is something I'm sure many people who are listening to can relate to, myself included. I quit violin a handful of times because I hated practicing. And can you talk a bit more about this? Like how did you find it again? Was it always sort of in the back of your mind calling to you? Was it sort of just like not leaving you alone almost?
Yeah, it's so interesting. It kind of all fell into place, really. To be honest, I totally forgot about piano for a good couple of years, completely. Sounds so bad. But then I started at secondary, and obviously, doing GCSE music, everyone, if you can play piano, you're instantly super cool. So I was like, I've got to get back into this. And I saw my old grade book, and my piano teacher had written in the back of it, sort of, hope you continue on your journey, hope you keep playing. And I was like, oh, I feel guilty now. So I just started having lessons again. Yeah,
the sort of guilt got to you, I guess, but thankfully it did. And sort of given your experience, would you want to change anything about the way music is taught? Would you want a sort of less traditional teaching experience, or what made you stick with the instrument again in the end, which I always think is fascinating, especially to what you mentioned at the start about being like, you didn't know what being a musician was, and that your school didn't always nurture that, which I find really fascinating, because I think even the title of composer, sometimes when you think of it as a kid, you just think of like the white men with powdered wigs, and that was a job you could do back in the day, but it's not something feasible now. So is there anything you would change in music education?
100%. I mean, I was really lucky. So when I went and started piano again, my piano teacher, I wrote a piece. I was writing since sort of age 12, classical little sonatas for the piano. And she was like, you need a comp teacher. And luckily my parents were like, sure, why not? And so I had one-to-one comp teaching since then. And so for me, that was the thing that was like actually allowed me to sort of start on this journey. And I think that young people, they need to be exposed to classical music in a way that is free and open, because I think a lot of the time it's exposed to them in a way that creates fear and a feeling of inadequacy and like sort of a lack of understanding. And so, young people aren't allowed to sort of create their own, sort of voice and explore sound in a way that, makes them feel calm and supported.
Yeah, 100%. It's very much like, here's the book of grades and here's the sort of composers that you have no connection with, and being forced to play that. And especially kind of, obviously this is a podcast and a collective for women in music and women in classical music. So I have to ask, do you remember your sort of first experience playing or even listening to a piece of music written by a woman?
100%. So I think that, I was always one of those people when I was doing piano and comp and stuff that's like, oh, it doesn't matter about representation, I'm here, I'm doing what I'm doing, whatever. And then I actually realized that women were writing music, and then it kind of all clicked for me. So Erykah Badu, her song Apple Tree, I think.
Yeah.
Great sort of amazing artist. But it was sort of the first piece of music I ever listened to that I felt completely spoke to me and saw me as, a young Black woman. I was in awe. And then I've got to say Callie Malone as a composer, her slow organ canons, so inspiring. It's like one of the first pieces I ever listened to be honest, like classical pieces. And I just think that it's, again, I was like, wow, here is a woman doing something so amazing. And, people are talking about it like they're talking about Mozart and Bach. And I was like, this is for me. Like, I then started to see myself becoming a composer.
Yeah, 100%. And did you have that moment sort of looking at the names on the scores and going, oh my gosh, a woman can do this? And it's not just these sort of big names, like you said, like the Bachs, the Mozart, the Beethovens. Did that sort of touch you in a very sort of personal way and then opened or unlocked that mind of, you wanting to be a composer as well?
100%. So Sariao, Guy Sariao, and her pieces and Step Up Beyond and all of those sorts of things. I think for me it's like sort of seeing the score, seeing a female name on the score and just thinking, wow, because I feel like we get introduced to classical music, it's so archaic, it's so in the past, like you were saying about white men in the past with the weird wigs. So it doesn't feel modern and relevant, and it doesn't feel like maybe you could do it. And I think that when I sort of clocked it and I heard her piece and I was like, this is actually something that I could write, this is something that I'd want to write. I was like, this is amazing. And look, there's all these people, these composer people respecting her and, seeing her music and her like sort of creative output as something that's valuable. And that really spoke to me. That was like turning point for me.
And speaking of, you writing that sort of kind of music, not only are you a phenomenal piano player, but you do write your own music. And can you tell me how you got your start composing and when you maybe began to take that seriously? Was it an accidental thing, or kind of what I'm always fascinated about composers is, was there always that sort of bug in you? And were you at the piano as a kid going, oh, this melody sounds cool? What were the sort of intricacies into your mind at that age?
Yeah, 100%. So I started composing quite a few years ago when I was 12, and then I started with my first comp teacher, and I was also a poor student with him.
It happens, doesn't it? It happens to the best of us.
Yeah, no, but I absolutely loved it. And he totally gassed me up. He would, be like, and I remember I'd say to my sister, because she didn't play any instruments, and I'd be like, oh, Tarquin, he thinks I'm, God's gift, and he thinks I've got this amazing talent. And I got so big-headed. But yeah, so I just sort of, I hated grade books. I didn't really enjoy that sort of thing, but I loved being at the piano. So I just sit and sort of sing little melodies and write little things. But it was interesting because I was always pushed by my family actually and friends to pursue songwriting, and I just never got into it. It's never. It was like I want it to be. It has to be in this classical style. It just had to be. And I did jazz for quite a while, but it still had to be classical, and I never really understood why.
That's so interesting. Were you listening to more classical music growing up, and were you surrounded by that? Interesting. So you just had this sort of call almost from nowhere, I guess, to to write music, which is phenomenal as well. Just to move on as well, when you were on the piano, which if anyone is listening and doesn't know, it's a fantastic TV show that highlights some of the UK's best amateur pianists. But on that show, you played one of your own compositions called Stardust. Can you talk me through what this composition is about and what inspired you to write it?
Oh, it's so dreamy. So it's quite a while ago. It's about 2 years ago that it was filmed, which feels crazy to say. Even before I got into Brit school, so it takes me back. So I wrote the piece sort of about being grateful and also sort of reflecting on the past and being in the present, but knowing that without the past you wouldn't be there, sort of, respecting the whole journey. It was quite an emotional piece for me because I had quite a lot going on at the time. So I was just it was quite a lot. And I feel like, in classical music, a lot of the time composers are quite sort of inward facing in terms of sharing emotional stuff. And, it was the first time that I'd ever written a piece that was about something that was personal to me. And yeah, it definitely changed my process.
You could definitely hear that in the song as well. Like, it's such an emotional and beautiful piece. And if you watch the episode that you're on the piano, for anyone that's listening, it stands out. It's such a phenomenal moment in TV as well. You're just sort of listening to all of these other players, and then your piece just, I feel like, sticks out and it's just so unique and beautiful. So I really appreciate you sharing that it was an emotional piece to write, because I definitely think you can hear that in the work as well. I've been very lucky that Precious has sent me some of her unreleased music. Is that right? It's sort of nowhere to be. I was listening to it going, I can't believe this. Like, I'm listening to this before anyone else, and it's just truly phenomenal, and I can't wait for the world to hear it and it be out there, because it's so beautiful. And again, each piece is you just have a way of writing emotion that just translates to a listener. It's gorgeous, and each piece for different reasons as well. So can you talk a bit about your upcoming music? What inspired that? What do audiences, what should we be prepared for, I guess, when we're going to hear your music coming out?
That's so exciting. Yeah, so I take a lot of inspiration right now, obviously writing lots of music for the organ recital. So all about late romanticism, thinking about Ouido and Messiaen and the Paris Conservatory. But I also take a lot of inspiration from jazz and bebop, just because I did jazz training. So, it's very much in me. So I'm writing a piece for piano and violin. I've got a piece for two flutes, piece for solo bassoon, and then I've got a piece for SAT, setting two Shakespeare sonnets against each other, sort of like an argument.
It's really interesting. Do you have a particular sort of instrument or kind of medium that you love writing for?
I've got to say piano. It has to be piano. It's where I started and it means the most to me. And for a long time, when I was younger, actually, I thought, I'm never going to write these pieces down. I'm never going to let anyone play them. And it's just going to be me and the piano. And it's
your own little secret, I guess, between you.
Exactly. Yeah. But now I'm definitely interested in sort of writing for choral groups. I really enjoy that. Anything for choirs. Great. It's always a different challenge for a composer, because you've got to interact with the choir and sort things out, and I find it quite fun. It can be quite dramatic at times, which I quite enjoy.
Yeah, and what's that writing process like? Is it mostly done on a piano, or is it done on like a laptop, or does it start on a piano and then sort of transfer to something more digital, or is it by hand? Could you maybe talk about that experience as well?
So in the past, definitely all on the piano. Now I much prefer to sit on the sofa and compose and watch traitors or something. That's me. That's a bit of me.
I love that as well.
So yeah, no, because to be honest, I feel like being a composer can be a bit lonely sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, especially when no one's hearing anything as well, and you're sort of in that echo chamber of like, is this good? Have I just listened to this too many times that this is now amazing? You kind of briefly mentioned it as well. This incredible organ recital that's coming up, which I believe is at St John's Church in Deptford on the 14th of March. But before we talk about the recital, well, I'm super interested in the organ. I'd love to play it, and I wanted to ask you about playing the organ, as I have some kind of crazy statistics here from the Society of Women Organists, which show that women make up only 10% of all directors of music and organists in UK cathedrals. And I will insert a photo here of this graphic, but if you're just listening to the podcast, it essentially shows that you are more likely to hear a piece of music composed by Herbert Howells or C.V. Stanford than a piece composed by a woman. So with that, I was wondering, how did you get started playing the organ, and did anyone in particular inspire you?
Okay, that is such a good question. So, to be honest, it was really random. My uncle was singing at a local at the church, and in the choir, and I went along, and there was an organist there, and I heard the organ for the first time, and I was in shock. This was about 4 years ago now, and I was just blown away. And my mum is such a pushy mum. She was just like, "Oh, I want you to have organ lessons. You're going to go talk
Love
to him." And so I went and talked to him, and it was quite stressful because you had to kind of audition to be allowed to touch the organ.
Wow. What, like with a piece of music? Like, is that?
Yes.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So it was kind of intense. And I remember at the time, it was really because so I was about, 14. And my mum and me was like, I'm going to play the Minute Waltz by Chopin. I decided not to do that in the moment, and I played a composition instead.
What a baller move as well. Just like, oh, sorry, no Chopin. Just, have you heard this piece by me?
So yeah, and he liked it. I don't know if it demonstrated enough technique, but he was happy with it. And so started on the organ, loved it. It's so fully like immersive when you're playing. You can't think about anything else. And I remember coming off the bench at the organ, and you feel dizzy. You're like, it's
Yeah,
full
it's like a
body.
beast, isn't it? It's just a huge
Really is.
looks, and you're playing it with everything, right? So it's like your hands, your feet as well. It's like a full body experience, which isn't intense. It's crazy. But then, so you got organ lessons from someone there then at the church, and then that's how you learned. Incredible. And then, do you have any advice to any young girls or women that want to start to play the organ? Like, where do you even begin with that? When if someone goes to their mom like you and goes, "Oh, I think I'm going to play the organ," what advice would you give them?
It's a hard one because I think you've got to, try and go see more live classical music, live organ music, go to churches, try and get to know the community because that is really important. And I think it's something is about being an organist that people don't tell you about. You've got to actually get on with the church and the people at the church. But also, I think, it can be really hard as like a young woman to go into a space and not see any other women. But you've got to remember that it's worth it. You just have to try, because if you do so, you will then become the representation that you wish you had. So you just have to give it a go. It's just, push through it because it's so worth it. So worth it.
And now you've no excuse. You've got people like Precious as well that are championing the way forward. And so now let's talk about your fabulous upcoming recital. Because if you're a young girl and are going to come to this show, you're going to see this beautiful woman playing some incredible music. So what can you tell us about it? Can you perhaps break down one of the pieces and the inspiration behind it?
One of the pieces, first piece I actually started writing for it was the sonata. And you might think, oh, late romantic sonata doesn't exactly go hand in hand, but it does. So I've deconstructed this sonata, and so we have this sort of augmented fifth pattern with sort of Widor-like harmony, and we explore lots of modal harmony as well, and we end up going to this development that ends with this very lush sort of jazz-ish messiaen-like harmony, and it's quite static, and then we come to the end, the recapitulation, but it's now in the major mediant, so which is Messiaen but also Radiohead, depending how you want to look at it. So,
I love, well, talking about like bringing classical music into the sort of modern world, that sounds like a fantastic way to do it as well. Speaking of the performance, how long have you been preparing for it? Maybe just give us like the backstory of what that's like to put on an organ recital.
I did my like sort of first proper piano recital last year, and I had 2 months to write 40 minutes of original music and get it all yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was tough. So, but ever since then I've been hooked, even though it was like the most daunting experience of my life. So I was like, oh, I'm not going to do another piano recital. Let me do an organ recital. Got the church on board, but really excited to raise money for the organ. When you're thinking about putting on your own recital, there's lots of logistic stuff, but it's mainly about the music. So you've got to be thinking about a narrative, especially with this type of sort of genre and era. And you've also got to be thinking about, how quick you write. So something that I've always been very lucky to have is I write extremely quickly when composing, which is really interesting. People always find it really odd, but I think it's because I've been at Brit and around loads of songwriters, and they write songs in like a day. So you've got to compose quickly. So I want to keep up. So that means that I find it really chill to write all this new music. And so all the music's already written actually. And I started about like a month ago. So feeling really happy. It's gonna be about sort of maybe like sort of 50 minutes of music, I'm thinking.
It's
So
just
yeah,
incredible. And yeah,
thank
what a
you.
skill to have as well, writing it so quickly. Is there any tips for sort of composers out there that maybe
Hmm.
are slower to write?
I think it's got to be about it's about the process, when I like start my piece, I act as if I'm like a producer and like I've got like a week to make the track or something, You've got to like make it like more like, oh, you got that time pressure, but
Mm.
also if you sort of sing out your pieces or play them, or you have an idea. So in my mind, when I go and sit at the piano or sit with my iPad and do my notation, I'm sort of thinking I'm going to write a piece in the style of this. It's going to be this form. It's going to be this long. I'm going to go to these keys. I'm going to do this sort of thing. You want to build your composer's toolbox, and
Mm.
then you'll be able to write like nothing. It'll just be, it'll come out of you so
Yeah.
easily.
So basically, have a plan in place and then sort of
Yeah,
like
exactly.
goalposts, I guess, aim for them, which is a great thing to hear as well. And speaking of the organ, do you have a sort of favorite piece for the organ written by a woman that you could recommend us? Or is there maybe a piece that, if no one's heard any organ music by women, what's like a good piece to sink your teeth into?
Okay, that is such a good one. So, to be honest, there's actually quite a lot. Anything by Callie Malone is a great idea, to be real. Just a great start. It's a lot more ambient in style. So if you're
Mm.
not as into classical, you would really enjoy it. But also, a new sort of ish female composer, Claire Singer. I really recommend her new organ stuff. Absolutely amazing. And then I'm going to try and pronounce this composer's name and piece. So it's Veronica Rauts Dravonic, and it is Qualasari, I think.
Nice.
But either way, amazing composer and also an inspiration for me. I actually got in touch with her to, ask her about advice about writing for the organ. And I think it's really important for any like sort of young female composers listening to this. Just get in touch. If there's someone you have a sort of inspiration, get in touch because, a lot of the time I found they're so friendly and they really want to help other women succeed and, sort of become more commonplace in this industry. So just get in touch and yeah, you won't regret that, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's great advice as well because if you look at the statistics as well, there's so many. We're just women in general in classical music are so underrepresented. So I found even my short time doing this that we all want to big each other up and help each other out because we're very
Yeah.
aware. We're still in this sort of world where men are being programmed more and we're just trying to get our voices heard, but also for that representation. If you're a kid who doesn't see yourself ever becoming a composer or a classical musician, then that's a real roadblock in your life. So I think we're all, I hope, under the understanding of, we can make effective change. So that's such a great shout as well for anyone listening, is to just like send a DM or get in contact or even like leave a comment because I'm sure, yeah, definitely. It's classical music as well. Like I mean, can't speak for everyone, but it definitely feels like a very friendly group of people that
Yeah,
we
yeah.
just and we love it as well because it's very niche as well. So it's small, but yeah, get in touch. And with that, what's next? Have you got anything in place? What does 2026 look like for you?
So, obviously the organ recital in March, but I'm planning another recital. So I'm likely going to do a piano recital with some special guest appearances from three of my friends, which is exciting. I'm also doing quite a lot of teaching. So, if anyone's interested, I teach sort of sound exploration, musical storytelling, composition, one-to-one lessons. So that's really important to me. I think that, if I had a female comp teacher, it would have allowed this journey to start way quicker.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important. And yeah, sort of I'm starting at Guildhall next year to do comp. So excited
Which is
about that.
incredible. Yeah. I feel like you're someone who's gonna have so much great music to come as well, and it's so amazing. Just I feel like you're definitely at the start of your journey, and it's gonna be so incredible to see what you do next as well. And then I guess we've talked a bit about this, but I had a question on here was if you could speak directly to the next generation of girls in music, what's the one piece of advice you'd want them to carry with them?
Don't give up. Don't just do it. Don't let anyone grind you down. And remember, I feel like it's always so hard to sort of like stop making it about yourself and just see yourself as like a sort of like you are one of women. And it's sort of, you've got to see that, you doing this, you pushing through, you are changing the space as you stand. And I have a story about this actually. I went to a composition summer school, and I went twice. And the first year I went, I was one of 5 girls out of the 60 composers. And the next year I went, it was half girls, half boys. So honestly, showing up does change things. So please just push through it, and it'll be so worth it.
Yeah. And I think what you said as well about, or even in your story, how you don't always have to be playing music forever, or, great at practicing and doing all the things that I think you probably grow up believing. Like, you can't be a classical composer or pianist, for example, if you don't play 6 hours a day and, you've quit twice. But I think bursting that bubble a little bit is going like, classical music and looks different for everyone, and it doesn't always just mean sitting down at the piano and playing scales for 10 hours a day and becoming the next great Clara Schumann or anyone like that. So I loved that part, and I really appreciate your honesty about that and your story as well. It's just going, you can quit, you can come back to it, don't force yourself into loving it, because that's the kind of the route into loathing it, I guess. But exactly. Yeah, but I love it, just do it as well. And my final question, which I think is always the hardest question I ask, and that is, what is your favorite piece of music written by a woman, and why is it your favorite?
So it's got to be Erykah Badu, although Charlie XCX would be up there because I love her music. So Apple Tree, it's a beautiful song, and I think that its message of sort of self-care and protecting your peace is really important, especially to women. If we do that, we can thrive, and I think that's just a beautiful message.
Yeah, and great track as well. So yeah, definitely recommend listening to it. Precious, thank you so much for your time. I will leave links in the description to all of her social media if you want to check her out. She does fantastic sort of behind the scenes content with the organ as well, which I'm really loving, which is great. And stay tuned for her upcoming organ performance at St. John's Church in Deptford on the 14th of March. Thank you again, Precious, and thanks for coming on.